Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday, where we tackle college football and NFL action, explore the biggest stories, and crown the most entertaining league of the week.
All right, welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover, and with me is John Barbin. We're here to talk football.
Yeah, let's get to it. So I get this is our very first episode, so we might as well explain a little bit of how we got here. We are both college football and pro football fans, and we haven't found a podcast that really focuses on both. There's a lot of college ones, obviously. There's a lot of NFL coverage, but I've never really found one that really splits the time between both. And even, I don't know, that's how we watch football, so that's how we wanted to cover it. So that's the genesis of this podcast.
Yeah, and I've always felt the same way. I mean, I'm a football fan. Football for me isn't just a one day a weekend type thing. I watch it on Saturday and I watch it on Sunday. And so it's just nice to have a place where we can talk about both, since we're both football fans and we're a fan of the NCAA and the NFL.
Not too much longer with the NCAA. Who knows is that going to be called soon? Good riddance to them anyways. Jesus. All right. So super quick. So we grew up around Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So we're both Canadian, and the Bills were kind of my introduction into the NFL. And this is back when they went on their run of multiple 4 Super Bowls and winning the AFC every year. So my adopted home team happens to be a really, really good team. So I just got used to watching really good football. Those are the games we would go to. We only lived an hour away. And then in college, we both did grad school at the University of Florida. And that's when Florida happened to be a powerhouse. So it's hard to not get football in your blood when you go to a major SEC school, and especially when that school is at its peak of its powers. So that's it's in us now. We can't really get it out of us.
No, going to Florida was a really eye-opening experience for me, because I went to school, university first in Canada, and just seeing what it was like in the SEC and how passionate it was there. I'll never forget when I first got there, because that would have been in 99. And the amount of stuff that was there from the 1996 championship Florida Gators was really surprising. Like it was like it happened yesterday. And it was, I'm like, oh, they're really into it here. And it was really the first game at the Swamp, and was just great. So, and that's similar with what John was saying with Buffalo. I also went to school at Oakville, and it was just across the border from Buffalo, and went to several home games there. And it was great to see that. We don't have an NFL team in Canada, so I was a fan of a lot of teams, but we physically went to more Bills games than anything else. And so I'm just a general NFL fan. So it's good to have a place where we can talk about both.
Right. Okay. And our bias is going to show through. You could clearly, some of it's right here on some of my helmet choices and the shirt I'm wearing, but we're going to try to cover every team and give them their due, even teams that maybe not our favorite team, but they got to get their due here. So, and then finally, the concept is, just from an entertainment value standpoint, weekly, we're going to rate which was college or NFL to us more entertaining, and we'll give our takes on how we got there. And as you're listening, if you've got a take, we'd want to hear your takes too. So always put it in the comment section, moving forward.
Yeah, and that's something that I've also noticed from, just general fans. The people will comment on the NFL, NFL fans will watch a day and they'll be like, this was sort of a nothing weekend, or not much happened, or this only one game was really good, and similar with college. And so you can have a time, and maybe when the NFL's down, that the college was really good, or vice versa. And, and then that's what, as a regular fan that watches both, it's good to see, both sides of it. So,
yeah, hence the Saturday versus Sunday. It's 2 days it's a bunch of days, but it's both all the time for us. All right, you want to get going then?
Yeah, let's do it. What
do
we got? So first, we're going to start off with the NCAA. We got our opening games this weekend. And, what are you excited about for the opening games, or really just for the NCAA season coming up?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we could call it games. We've got the FSU Georgia Tech game, which that's the only game that's going to move the needle or anyone's going to watch.
No offense to SMU, but I agree.
No, well, you know what? I do like SMU, but yeah, right. So with this game, the bummer is that it's in Dublin. I hate these neutral site games. I know they're trying to expand it and all this stuff, but either of those stadiums, it's infinitely more fun to watch Like the TV, for me, the TV presentation, the atmosphere, this is a common complaint about neutral site college games. You just don't get that like thing. Like I've gone to Doak Campbell. You just can't, that's amazing. You just can't replace that feeling. And I know Georgia Tech Stadium is fun too. And on TV, it comes across like you get the feeling. And I've been to other neutral site games and it just doesn't have it. Like, it's not like being at the Swamp or being in any of these places. So,
I'm interested to see if you're going to feel that way with Georgia Clemson coming up. But I'm going to disagree with you a little bit here because I have zero interest in Georgia Tech at Florida State in the regular season mid-October. That would be a nothing game for me. There'd be other games on the schedule that'd be way more interesting. So an FSU Georgia Tech game in Dublin at a neutral site to kick off the season when there's not much else going on. This is more interested I'd be in that than I would normally. So here's the other thing I'm going to go about this one. So I'm excited because there's only a handful of games on the Saturday and the schedule picks up the following week. I am looking forward to the overreaction Saturday. So if Florida State hesitates to move the ball for a little bit, people are going to be like, Florida State sucks this year. If Florida State, they give up a sack, this is the offensive line, there's going to be an overreaction immediately Saturday over, because they're supposed to be good and they will be good. And so that people read too much into this first one. It reminded me that they had Nebraska Northwestern last year and it was something similar. So I think it's I'm looking forward to the when they've got no one else has anything else to talk about. It's the first ranked game. And so there's going to be over analysis on FSU Saturday and Sunday.
Way too much analysis. Like you said, nothing else to talk about. The only ranked team coming off of the snub for the playoffs and then, not showing up in that Georgia bowl game, which was just horrific. Like that was so, have some pride. Like I can't imagine what the FSU fans thought of that. I know I know everyone felt snubbed and who cares. And almost like, oh, really? You're going to do that to us? Watch this. We'll get you back. But really, you just no show a game. That's I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe their just attitude and their spirits were gone. But that's not a lack of talent on that. The way that game turned out, that is a not wanting to be there type of result. Mm-hmm. So, and you're right. The overreaction is going to be. There's nothing else to react to. And the only other thing I think is going to be part of that massive overreaction is depending how DJU plays. Is he a potential sleeper Heisman candidate or is it just the same old DJU? Like if he throws a critical pick at a bad time of the game, it's going to be, oh, well, FSU missed their chance last year. DJU's just not it. But if he shows up well, I bet you any money it's going to be, oh my God, they just picked up where they left off. And this time they got a quarterback who's going to do it. So yeah 100%.
I'm interested to see how he looks too. I mean, it should be good. It's, I don't know how many different offensive coordinators he's worked with in the last 4 years because he's changed teams like some people change their shirts. So, I mean, I hope this one fits. He's got a good team around him. I don't think they're going to ask him to do too much. So it should be good. But, looking forward to seeing him play.
Yep.
What else? What else you got looking forward to coming up?
All right. I got a couple categories here. So my pumped up for category is just no divisions in the Big Ten and no divisions in the SEC. Now that obviously bleeds into all the new teams as well, but I'm specifically in the Big Ten. It's finally not going to be Ohio State beating up on whoever shows up out of the West in the championship game, which has been, that narrative has been going on for way too long. It's so nice that you can actually get maybe two legitimate teams in the championship game this time around.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least you have more to choose from, right? So that's I agree with you. I think just the number of teams that are in both those leagues and the chance of having one division so much better than another is gone. The teams are still there. Everyone has to play a variety of teams, but yeah, that's going to be nice this year to see how it stacks up at the end. I'm dying to know the tiebreakers, because there's a decent chance it's going to be sort of three teams with 9-2 conference records, and then how they pick that. So I haven't dug deep into that yet, but that potentially could be interesting.
Yeah. Sadly, though, I think somehow Iowa's still going to be in the championship game.
There's if you wanted a sneaky long shot that would pay a good price that's not out of this world would be Iowa making the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah,
because they don't. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think they play. I'm going to look it up. It says they don't play Michigan or Ohio State or something like that. Like it's a very reasonable.
they're
You
going to
talk
have
about something else.
a more of a direct path. Oh, the other odd thing, I'm kind of curious. I don't know if the word's excited. I'm just curious what a Northwestern game is going to look like in there. I guess it's just some small. Does it even have stands or like a few bleachers? I think there might actually be people sitting on lawn chairs at the side of this one. So it's going to be so weird watching a team like Ohio State play in what looks like an average high school stadium for a regular season game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not necessarily, I don't know. I don't know if anyone else is interested, but I think it's just going to be interesting to see such an odd setting on a big time broadcast.
Oh, for sure. That's sort of like the Kansas at the Kansas State or the Kansas City Chiefs stadium too. For some of it, that's going to be really interesting.
Well, but that's a real stadium. I'm pretty sure Northwestern is just playing in a parking lot. Like, there's not much going on with whatever they've got set up for this year.
So Iowa misses Michigan and Oregon out of the Big Ten. So that's why they play at Ohio State, which will be tough, but all the other games on their schedule are manageable. So that's why at Washington's going to be tough too. But I mean, that's still got 10-2s in the possibility, right? So
I just had a terrible thought. Could it just be an Iowa Ohio State rematch?
It absolutely could be. Yeah. Although Ohio State hasn't beat Michigan in 3 years, so I don't.
Yeah. Well, I think now that Harbaugh's gone, that path might be a little easier. Do you actually think there's all this chatter about Ryan Day's hot seat? Do you think that's even a real thing?
Well,
I mean, they are so
question.
stacked this year.
If we open this up to different message boards and fan bases, and you ask some people in Columbus, you would absolutely get a percentage of the fan base that say he's on the hot seat because he's lost to Michigan 3 years in a row. So it's now is that correct? Is that a correct opinion, or is I don't think so, because that's not the only way I would evaluate a coach. Like, he's done a really good job recruiting. Their roster's been excellent, and but it's there's definitely some fans would, if it's 4 in a row, that they'd have a really hard time with that.
And I think I love that passion out of college fans. That's so irrational. Like, your team is really good. They end up in the playoffs all the time. So a couple of years, you don't dominate the team you have for 20 years, and people are calling for his head. I don't think you get that in the NFL, that degree of irrationality, which is partly why college is fun, because the fans they're a little bit like out there.
Yeah. You could have made that similar case with Nick Saban when he lost to like the Auburn, and then a weird loss in Georgia one year and stuff like that. There was, you never would have thought about saying he's not a good coach, but
no.
There's something. So another thing I'm looking forward to this season, something, because like you were saying before about a lot of teams in the Big Ten, a lot of teams, the SEC, all with the expansion part. One of the things something we've never seen before is UF's schedule has been described as the hardest schedule in the history of college football, with who they have to play and on the road and stuff. And it's just something we've never seen before, with so many ranked teams and it's such a stretch, so that's I'm excited about that. It fits in with the no division narrative, and but seeing all those tough games, it's going to be good TV. It'll be good to watch it.
Actually, that's a good point. I think we're going to routinely see the toughest schedule ever in the history moving forward. Like, specifically in the SEC, I don't think the Big Ten's breadth of talent's quite there yet. But with what's in the SEC, I'm sure a couple of rolls of the dice in the next couple of years, if OU really gets back to being a powerhouse, you could end up with another toughest schedule ever, and then another toughest schedule. Like, imagine a season.
Florida's last 5 weeks is against Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and then at Florida State. So and 5 of the top teams, top 10. Well, they'll be in the top 15. 5 teams.
Now LSU's working off name recognition there, but Ole Miss is doing actually a bit of heavy lifting for its recent performance. But picture a year where LSU's at its peak of powers, Alabama's at its peak of power, Georgia's at its peak of powers, and Same with Texas and same with OU. I can't believe those are in there. And imagine A&M finally puts a real season together and someone gets all of them. I mean, it's possible someone gets all of those. I don't know how you could ever. There is no other way to create a worse schedule. And then if it is somebody like Florida, they get stuck with FSU outside of the conference anyways. So maybe it's only Florida could ever have that worse schedule because they always have FSU as long as they're good.
It'd be teams like that, right? It'd be a Mississippi State or a Kentucky or Tennessee or something is going to be in that mix because of the rivalry games and so.
Yep. All right. Well, what do you got?
Something else I'm interested in. Let's see. Just the weird travel, like just seeing regular season games like Oregon State or Oregon and Ohio State and like Florida at Texas and stuff those were very unique, the non-conference games before. And then for those to be regular conference games now, this is going to be different. This is nothing we've seen like that. So I'm, just to see how much, and this ties into another part. We've got the expanded playoffs this year now. So 12 teams are making the playoffs. And the big argument against the expanded playoffs was that it would diminish the regular season, that people would, that's what they really wanted to hold on to in college football was the importance of the regular season. And I don't think having the 4-team playoff really diminished the regular season. And I don't think the 12-team playoff's going to either. I think it'll bring in more rivalry games at the end of the season will mean more about where teams end up or where they could be in the playoffs. But just to see that the regular season isn't negatively impact just because the playoffs were expanded. I'm interested to see what that feels like in November when those games are being played and if there's anything taken away from that.
Yeah, I agree. The purists never like the playoffs or the expanded playoffs. And I get that concept that each bowl game pre-playoffs, pre-BCS, it was kind of fun because I actually really liked the idea that multiple bowl games could have been the championship game. Mm-hmm. So whoever won the Rose Bowl, whoever won the Sugar Bowl, whoever, the Fiesta Bowl, back then it was like, okay, let's find out next week which one of those actually turned into the champion, which I remember that was fun. But then, that's never coming back. And I actually don't think it's going to diminish the regular season the way the purists think. I'm with you. I think there's going to be more interesting games, especially with the way the leagues are structured now. There's going to be more big time games and more interesting games towards the end of the year. But it won't stop people from complaining on whoever was the 13th team.
For sure. No, I think that I agree. I think that Ole Miss and Mississippi State plays the Egg Bowl at the end of the year, and Ole Miss is going to be in a position to be in the 12-team playoff, right? So that potentially would be the most important Egg Bowl that's been played, recently because it affects the playoff spot. So, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right. So, all right. My next one for college is that I'm actually excited for is the Big 12 in general. Just really? Looks like, it looks like it's going to be a fun league. I get it that there's not likely a national championship obvious contender in here at all. Or the other way to say it is if anybody from this league makes it there, that's clearly a surprise. Like even no matter how strong Utah is, they haven't shown the ability to go all that way yet, which is probably the strongest team in that conference anyways. But you've got like some undercover Heisman candidates in there, if not just overtly like great Heisman candidates like Fafita and Travis Hunter and Jalen Daniels. And I guess you could even throw Shedeur Sanders in there. There's odds on all of them. But so there's like some serious players that are going to be fun to watch. And something about what feels like parity or a somewhat normalized level of skill throughout that league. I just feel like some of those games, like I'm looking forward to Kansas. I'm just looking at my notes here. West Virginia, Utah, Oklahoma State, Colorado, just for the circus that is Colorado. I mean, you could argue they have the most entertaining thing in college football in Colorado with Deion. Not about that if they're good or not any of that. Just as far as drawing attention, like what we talk about here is what was just entertaining. Love him or hate him, it's hard to not watch him. Just Deion alone, let alone whatever happens with his team. And now he's in a bigger conference with even tougher, a different conference with what I think is going to be tougher competition. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here. But that league just seems like fun to me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I agree with you with the parity part. Like I think there's some teams in the SEC, they're going to be, Georgia would be a 4-touchdown favorite over some teams in the conference. But as in the Big 12, I don't think you really have that. I think it's a little more spread out. I think anyone could beat anyone at any given time. Mm-hmm. And even though they're not the SEC or the Big 10, it's still the quality football. And, and like you said, there's some individual people there that are outstanding. Mm-hmm. So, which you want to watch. The Colorado-Nebraska game, I think last year was something I was really looking forward to because of the circus that Colorado was, and to see how they're doing. And I that's one of those things that we've talked about this before, where I remember when that rivalry was a big deal, and so that was seeing it played at a competitive, with some juice in it was really good. So I really like that.
Oh yeah. I look forward to that game. Sorry, you're right. I didn't mean the competition in the Big 12 is tougher for Colorado. There's more parity, so there's a chance they actually could be better. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. I guess I'm just having.
I got that.
You got that. You guys got that right. And the Pac-12, what is Pac-2? Doesn't even exist anymore, anyways.
It's really crazy that it's still listed like that on ESPN. It's just the two lonely teams just sitting there with the.
What a disaster. We're gonna have to talk about that in the offseason. Just how that just shouldn't have happened. Like the way it just completely fell apart. Anyways, all right.
I'd love to, if we could sit down with the AD for like Washington State and have, say, okay, level with me. Like what happened? I'd love to know that. Like how this.
I wonder if they know.
I don't know. I'm dying to know if it was something, if the opportunity was presented and they said no, or if they thought something else would happen and but then they were someone promised something and then withdrew it, or I'm assuming something had to. There's no way that those two it was Washington State and Oregon State, right? Mm-hmm. There's no way those two guys were sitting there, or girls, and sitting there thinking like, okay, this is going to collapse, but like we're going to stay. I'll stay. Like that. There's no way that would.
No.
So I don't.
I mean. A conference collapses and leaves two teams behind. That just seems so. You would 10 years ago, you couldn't have guessed that. If you had 1,000 tries, you couldn't have guessed that would happen. Impossible. Impossible.
Yeah.
And I've read some articles on this, and I don't know what's what, but it seems like some of the collapse was due to the leadership of the conference focusing on Olympic sports versus the thing that matters, like the thing that makes the real money. And from what I understand, they were almost signing the dotted line on Oklahoma and Texas joining, like way back. And that I think that's better than where they ended up. That would have been cool.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I remember when it sometimes like the athletic director has like a meeting and all the coaches are there, right? So the men's, women's basketball, football and everything. And I don't know how that meeting would have gone once all this was decided, and where it's like we're in our conference still, go out and get them guys like I don't know. It's the,
who we playing and who's our rival now? Like,
no, I don't.
Where are we going?
Like, we get it. Do I get my bonus for being a conference champion? If there's only like,
would they even do any of that this year?
I don't know. And those things like being in a conference final or in a conference championship, a lot of coaches' contracts that's written into it. So
that's such a mess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got a weird one here to finish off my college half.
Perfect.
I have a category here of things I'm worried about or concerned about. Mm-hmm. I only have one right now, and it's that Alabama is going to be just as good as last year. And because when Saban retired, I had this moment. Obviously, we're Gators fans, somewhere in there. We're college fans, but also obviously we're Gators fans, sort
Deep
of
down.
Still. And just this sense, I had this immediate sense that, now there's a chance that just Alabama won't be constantly taking up one of the two spots in the SEC championship game and sucking all the oxygen out of the room for SEC stuff and always in the playoffs and just their standard spot in the postseason. I don't know why. I just had this thought, that's just nice. They're just not going to be there. Now there's a changing of the guard. It might be exciting, something new, something different. I'm just sick of seeing them win all the time. And then it occurred to me that Kalen DeBoer's record, I don't know, his winning percentage might even be better than Saban's. and he's
If you look at everything, like all his teams and his stops, it's pretty impressive.
It's crazy. And he's won everywhere he's been, and immediately with less talent. So then I started thinking, oh my God, what makes me think he's going to do worse with more talent?
Mm-hmm.
And so it actually was just setting in that, I think Alabama's going to do exactly what Alabama does, and nothing's going to change at all. And they're going to be right there. That nothing's going to change. And there's like, oh no. So they're just, I was just hoping for something different, but I just don't think it's going to happen. They might look a little different the way they get there, but I think they're just going to roll.
Yeah, no, that's a good concern. It's on one hand, I root for good teams and I want to see excellent teams, and I don't mind seeing them crush competition, but it can be short-lived. It can be like after a couple of years. I remember I felt that way with Clemson and Alabama. Felt like that was in the championship game several times, and I remember thinking it was soon after that I was like, well, I could really go for someone else now. I'm sure it was great for Bama and Clemson fans, but it was, I was ready for something different. So no, that's a good point. The last thing I had for mine was I'm really looking forward to the first, like not week 0, but week 1 of the college to have Georgia, Clemson, Florida, Miami, and Notre Dame at Texas A&M all on the same day is going to be great. So that's those are the college football days that I look forward to. I enjoy significantly. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And I always appreciate big teams scheduling big time out of conference games. I think that's just gonna, I don't know. I haven't thought through it. Is that going to be even more necessary to make the playoffs?
No, I think because your conference schedule is going to be so rough. I don't think that's going to be as a priority anymore.
For some teams, maybe for teams fighting for the 11, 12 spot.
Like your scrappy Big 12 conference you like so much, they like Arizona or the Kansas would have to schedule like a good out of conference opponent to make up for that. So,
and that could be the difference if they have a tie record with one of the other teams in the conference, but they have a big out of conference win. That could be the difference right there. I'm just hoping for any way to get better out of conference games. I'm hoping somehow that.
Well, I mean, listen, and
that works.
I've always felt that way too, right up until I saw the conference schedule this year for like the Big Ten and the Big SEC. Like those are great games. It's great games.
Yeah. So, but maybe without divisions that normalizes their schedules anyways, and you still have to have that big out of conference game.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so that's college.
Yep.
I think we're done for the college. What we're looking forward to and what we're worried about. Moving on to the NFL. You want to start?
Sure.
All right.
So something that has been most prevalent that I've been thinking about is the Aaron Rodgers coming back from injury. A lot of people have been talking about it. I was really struck by the win total for the Jets because I think it opened at 10.5 and it's still about 9.5 now. And everyone's just assuming they're going to be really good and that he'll be really good. And I just don't understand that. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I'm looking forward to, him looking good. I can also understand that it wouldn't happen. So I feel like it could be a lot of anticipation for nothing. So I hope it, I'm interested to see what happens. I'm going to be watching that first game like a hawk. And seeing how he moves and seeing what it looks like. So they have a good defense. They've got a really good defense. So that's going to make up a lot. But man, I don't. Do you think
that, I know that they were on Hard Knocks. I mean, the stage was set last year. They were on Hard Knocks. He just came off 2 great seasons. It was so set up for them to be just a must-watch thing. And then the injury happened. At his age, given that injury, is there any precedent for guys coming back and being at maximum performance after that? Or should we expect a drop off, or we don't know?
Yeah, I think it's different if it's anything to do with his arm or throwing, but it's his Achilles. You reconstruct the Achilles. The re-tear rate is low afterwards because you can really sew it up strongly. So, and it's not and he's not a running back or wide receiver. So he just has to plant off it. So for that position, for that injury, I don't think it's going to be a thing. So.
Yeah, I thought about that, and then I thought about Cousins, and I'm like, are we expecting too much from two guys at that age coming off of what looks like a pretty brutal injury? But
yeah, for sure.
So we'll have to see. All right. Well, speaking of that, one of my teams that I consider a must watch is the Atlanta Falcons because of Kirk Cousins, and partly because of the injury, partly because of the media circus that's going to be surrounding that team because of the Michael Penix pick. And no matter, so this is my thought. This is my take. Let me. What do you think of this one?
Walk you through it here.
Yeah, I'll walk you through it.
All right.
They spend a bunch of money on a guy who, for what is he, 38, 30, whatever he is, really old.
Can tell you in 1 second.
Yeah. Tore his Achilles tendon, is a good regular season quarterback, but has one playoff win in his career?
36.
He's 36. Okay, he's not super old, but he's getting up there.
Not a young guy.
Yeah. So they give him a boatload of money at 36 years old. He has one, I think, career playoff win. He's shown to be a decent, a good regular season quarterback. And on top of that, they draft what I thought was one of the best QBs coming out of college and just exciting to watch, Penix. I mean, he was just in the national championship game. He just throws a nicer looking ball than anybody else. And so I think they're just going to be the center of controversy all the time. So if they win a game, or if they continue to win games throughout the regular season, it justifies the Cousins pick. And then it fuels the fire of people ripping on them for taking Penix instead of some other player who could help them win, like right now. But if they start to lose, it's just going to fan the flames of people saying, put Penix in, put Penix in. So win or lose, I think the media is going to feast on this team. So for me, they're just must-watch TV because I just project I'm excited to watch them win or lose because I'm just excited for the controversy and just the media storm.
Right.
Because there was so.
What I hear you saying is they're in an untenable situation. Like win or lose, it's going to be bad. And the pressure that it puts on Cousins, the demand for Penix to play, there's just really no good way out of it. I just want to, and I can confirm the Cousins has one playoff win ever. So you're right about that.
Right.
And you're probably just verbalized what the Washington football team GM thought years ago when Kirk Cousins wanted the extension and they didn't want to give it. And if you could have gone back in time and said like, hey, talk to me, what's good, that probably would have been the same argument. There's a good quarterback, can't get us through the playoffs. That's why they went with a single year deal. That's, went to Minnesota and stuff. But it's, so it's going to be an untenable situation, win or lose. And it's I think it's, I'll paint the silver lining here is that if you wanted to draw up a situation for a rookie quarterback to be able to learn from a good player that could, and whether they make the transition at game 6, game 8, or even if it's next season and he just sits behind Kirk Cousins for a year, that's not bad either for Penix. You know what I mean? So I think that a lot of times the rookie players or quarterbacks are pushed in too soon. So that is not a bad situation to be in because what we do know for sure is that Cousins is going to be there long term, right? So, that's not bad. But you're right. That's going to be kind of like the FSU Georgia Tech like over analysis day one. Like that's the minute Cousins is like a 3-and-out or something in week 1. Like it's going to be Penix is going to be the most popular guy on the team.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. Atlanta will be permanent over analysis, no matter what else is going on. That situation, and I'm with you. I never agreed with the takes that it was a bad pick because you're just hedging your bets. What 65 quarterbacks played last year? That
was a really good point. That's you said that earlier. That is. I don't think that people realize how many QBs played in the NFL last year when there's only like 32 teams. So there's over 60 QBs played. So
McCarthy's done for the season already. You think the Vikings want Cousins back?
Oh man. Yeah.
And Darnold ain't the answer. So It's just it can happen. It can happen so quickly. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. It can happen. Like we don't even know if Burrow's going to ever really be properly coming back from that injury. So I don't know. I don't see the problem with having your future guy already on the team. It's like the Rodgers Jordan Love thing. To me, that's the same thing. Rodgers and Jordan Love. I do not understand the criticism. I think the media just needs something to talk about. So they just want to kick the hornet's nest there on that one. But I guess it's fun to talk about. But I can't wait to see what happens.
No, I can't. That was you're 100% right. That was the picking Jordan Love. You know, what's fascinating about that is that that's the exact same thing that happened to Aaron Rodgers. Like he was picked, he sat behind Brett Favre, and I think he really benefited either learning from Brett Favre or at least not being put in as a rookie. And then when he came in, he was in a way better situation to be successful than before. So it was fascinating that he personally had such a hard time with Jordan Love getting picked, considering that was the plan that they did for him too. You know, and I think it's a great plan. I think it's a great plan for Atlanta. You know, because forcing, you know, people who get forced to QBs who get forced to play in their first year is always going to be a challenge. Always, like it, because the things that happen like with Stroud are rare. Like Troy Aikman went 1-15 in his first year. You know, like he got sacked a lot. Like that easily could have been a season-ending injury, or like that could have been like an Andrew Luck situation where he got beat up so much that had to retire early. You know, like those are rare when something like that happens. So,
Manning threw a bunch of picks. Favre threw a bunch of picks, but you know everyone's got short-term memory. The media just has to talk about something. But when when we first got into football, this never happened. Rookies never played right away. They always sat. I remember thinking that's odd. Why are these rookies playing? I was just so used to the old way. I guess that just dates us for how long ago we started watching football. That it just the Favre to Rodgers to Love. That's how it used to be. It's just, that guy's been there for a while. Like, I can't wait for when it's finally his turn. Now you're going in day one and sink or swim. And I think it's the economics of it all. And I don't know.
It's really hard to pay someone $20 million and they're not playing. But you're right. What I remember from that era where the rookies never played, the only way you would see them is in the preseason. And then you wouldn't see them in the regular season.
Speaking of which, the preseason is utterly unwatchable.
Yeah, I'm struggling with it this year. Like there's some things that have come out there like, oh, Bo Nix looks good and stuff, but I don't enjoy watching those games. Like it's clear that they're running a very vanilla offense. It's a very vanilla defense. They don't want to show anything. The announcers have said that about the kickoff stuff, that they're like, oh, this is going to look different in season because people are scheming up stuff. But I can't get into watching
something
that.
I don't understand, and that fits for this podcast, is so go with me on this train of thought here, because I'm clearly missing something, and I think it's just my expectation, but I want to hear your take. So everybody that makes an NFL roster, even just to get to the preseason, had to have been one of the best players in college. You don't even get to the preseason without being one of the one. What you're in the 1%. That's how you even got here.
I'd say between 5 and 1%, because
whatever it is, you've made it to an NFL roster and you're suiting up for a preseason game. That's super rare. Just that. Yeah. So when we watched those players in college just the year before, they were awesome. They were lighting it up. Pure entertainment. Great games.
Yes.
Then in the preseason, it looks like they forgot how to play football, or they just, whatever's going on, it's ugly, it's sloppy. I don't know if it's just the vanilla thing and they're not asked to actually win the game as much as, I just want to see if this guy runs the right route. Does this guy actually follow instructions? And they don't care how chunky the game looks. But I'm watching people fumble the snap like multiple times. Then I'm watching people fumble the handoff. And not to mention even completing a pass. Yeah, sure, whatever. And quarterbacks holding the ball and running out of bounds and holding the ball, getting sacked, then throwing a pick, then a strip sack fumble. But then you look that guy up and he has all the passing records for his college.
Yeah.
Just from a year or two ago. And so something's going on that I don't understand in the preseason, where they either they're nervous, whatever it is, they do not look how good they were in college.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because they're playing against seasoned pros. Like every team's got their backups and guys trying to make it. So logically, you would think this shouldn't look that bad because these are all guys at the same level who were all really good in college, all trying to make a team. And somehow none of them look like they know how to play football. And then, but the guys who finally make it, then it starts looking really good again in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all the same talent. I don't know. There's something odd about how bad. Put it this way: the preseason, I don't think should look as bad as it looks.
Right. Yeah.
But it's unwatchable.
Right. And to further your point, as soon as week 1 starts, everyone looks way better, like the same players, look like they're playing better. So I think it's a preseason thing. If I had to guess, again, I'd love to talk to a coach and, get the actual thought on it. But if I had to, what I guess they're doing is that they practice, like they know their schedule, they know they're playing week 1, week 2, and they're already scheming stuff up, and they practice that really well to play those games. And then in the preseason game, they sort of meet for about 10 minutes before, and they say, okay, this is the stuff we're running today. And so all different. It's none of the stuff they practice. They don't want to show anything when they play other teams and that stuff. And so the reason why it looks so discombobulated is because this is the stuff they're only willing to show because they're never going to run it again. They've never practiced it. And so it's that's my only guess, because you're right. It's the top level of football, and it shouldn't be the number of that Pittsburgh game where they had the number of failed centered of quarterback snaps was crazy. It was frustrating to watch.
And that's Justin Fields. I mean, he's started in the league for multiple years. Now all of a sudden he can't even
like that great. He's not. He can get a snap. It's like, I know that.
But just think of him at Ohio State and how dominant he was. He didn't fumble the snap. And then in Chicago he wasn't doing that. Now all of a sudden he can't receive a snap. Anyways, I don't know. So what do you got?
Okay, so what I got. So something I'm looking forward to. I'm going to go off the board on this one. So this is the two of the big changes are going to be the kickoff rule. So moderately interested in that, but I'm actually interested in the banning of the hip drop tackle part. I think that's really interesting because they're doing it for safety reasons, right? They want to get rid of it. When they show, I don't know if you've seen this, but on the NFL website, there's like a little video you can watch where they say, this is a hip drop tackle. This is what's going to be, this is a penalty now this year and what it looks like. And it's pretty complicated. Like the defender has to wrap the guy with 2 arms. He has to go weightless, where he just sort of takes his feet off the ground and then lands on the player's legs. And so I'm worried that it's going to delay the games, and there'll be more replay to try and figure out what's a bad tackle or not. But in terms of the injury part, I'm hoping that it does reduces injuries, right? Because those are the main impetus for these 2 rule changes with the kickoff one and the hip drop tackles, that there be less significant injuries. So because nothing, as we just talked about with Aaron Rodgers, nothing alters a season and therefore makes it worse more than catastrophic injury to an important person. Well,
that particular tackle, it's sort of like it when you see it. And all of the injuries, I know, it's subjective,
it's like
but
pornography.
yeah, you know when you see it. But when you see what, like, that was what happened to Mahomes' ankle, and then what took out Andrews on the Ravens, and when you actually see it, it kind of he basically grabbed him from behind and sat on his ankles.
Yeah,
and you could. So I talked to one of our Tyson, biomechanics researcher, and I asked him, like, what's going on with that? And he said that it's just the NFL defensive players adjusting to all of the previous rules of what they can and can't do. And they're finding a way to bring a guy to the ground now, given all of the constraints. Like, there's all kinds of hits they can't make it. Like when we
can't dive the legs, can't spear.
30 years ago, you could put your helmet right through the guy's heart. And that was just a good play.
That was
you can ear hole a guy, and they just didn't. That was just like, that's good. Don't go over the middle. You're going to die. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what we grew up watching. And slowly, you can't do that. You've got to be very careful. There's the no horse collar thing. So there's just a bunch of stuff they can't do. But since they're good enough to adjust to all of that into this, I think they can adjust out of this. And especially once refs start calling it and they start realizing, I think it'll take a couple years, but I think the players are good enough to realize, what I just did here is what I'm going to get called for. I know how to get around that now. Kind of like when guys sack the quarterback and they make sure they don't land on top of them. They're just adjusting.
Yes. No, you're right. And it's really going to start with coaching and drills and, really relearning how you tackle, because there's some people they don't even think about it. It's just ingrained that they grab and fall down. So it's going to be an adjustment, but you're right. Like, they'll be able to make it, but there's definitely going to be some either blown tackles or, things that look like a regular tackle that's called the hip drop tackle that might not be this year. So the growing pains are going to be a bit much, but it's, again, if it's going to make an improvement on the injury part, that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my final point on that is I don't remember ever seeing that kind of tackle. I think the players evolved into it because of all the restrictions. Like, can you picture Ray Lewis tackling somebody like that?
Like, I can, just because I just watched that NFL video thing where they showed clips from last year of people doing it. So
can you picture Ray Lewis or Brian Urlacher tackling somebody like that?
When I saw these two clips, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen people do that often.
All right.
Like, it's
I guess we never focused on it until they brought it up.
Yeah, for sure. Right. I mean, I looked at it as like, if it was a player for a team I was going for, I remember saying like, oh, thank God he brought him down. Like, that's how I looked at it before.
Yeah. All right, so I guess I got one for you here. So it's a quick one. Just the narrative around Brock Purdy and this idea that he's just not getting his due because he was the last pick. And somehow psychologically, I think maybe I'm more focused on the media, because again, we're talking about games and the media. They just don't want to give him his due. And I'm trying to think, what player made it to their conference championship game in their rookie season? And the only reason we don't know if he could have won that game and gone to the Super Bowl because he got hurt. But there's no reason to think they didn't have an equal shot as Philly to win that game. Then he goes to the Super Bowl and takes Mahomes to overtime in his second year. And somehow there's still a narrative that, like, well, he's a system quarterback, we'll see. And I think people have to fit the narrative of, well, there has to be a reason why everyone passed on him. And there has to be a reason why he's the last draft pick. So you got to keep chopping down his accomplishments. But then isn't that what Tom Brady was? The 199th pick? And
the 6th round.
So I'm starting to think Purdy's going to need to win like 4 Super Bowls for people to go, oh, maybe he was good. But it's just, whereas CJ Stroud has a good year and they're like, look at him, they got their franchise quarterback. But then but Purdy's better than that. Purdy's won more playoff games. And CJ Stroud in an interview said, I don't know why they're ripping on Purdy. Like, that guy's good. But wow. I guess it's just the media. I guess the media just doesn't know what they're talking about. And I'm sure if you talk to football people, they're like, put it this way, there was only 2 quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, and it wasn't anyone else. It wasn't Lamar Jackson, wasn't Josh Allen, wasn't Jalen Hurts or anybody else. So I think the media just needs something to talk about when it comes to that one. It's just, I've never seen anyone just constantly, it's got to be the talent around. It's got to be something else. It just couldn't possibly be him. It's got to be something else.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's the for someone to go to the, like you said, the conference championship game and then the Super Bowl, and to have that much negativity around him and his ability, for someone that's done that is crazy. Like, and you're right. I think it is part of the, kind of reminds me of some of the Moneyball stuff where it's like the pitcher is really good, but he throws funny, so no one wants him. But he was a really good reliever, and so the Purdy might not meet your stereotypical expectations of what you thought of, coming out of college. But if you look at his numbers and he gets it done, it simply just gets it done, and yeah, he's got a good team, but like I've seen some quarterbacks on good teams not get it done. So
right. All the quarterbacks he beat also had good teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just straight up. And I have a note here, and it just says, what do Giants fans think when they see Purdy getting paid $900,000 a year and they see going to the Super Bowl? and Daniel Jones making $40 million a year hanging out in the rehab room while Tommy Cutlets takes the field. Like what's the giant Louise? What do you actually think about that? Like what it's just they must just be sick to their stomachs. Like and obviously seeing the Giants on Hard Knocks, watching them lose Barkley, but just the whole thing just seems so backwards. I guess part of this leads into my next section, if you don't mind. It's my disaster teams. And the disaster factor number one team is the Giants. I think this is just a slow motion train wreck. And the Daniel Jones thing, I know the preseason doesn't really matter, but he threw 2 interceptions and a pick 6 on the goal line. And it's like, this is the guy you dumped $80 million on. And I just think it's bad timing with Hard Knocks highlighting Joe Shane and all of his choices. And they somehow think Malik Neighbors is going to fix this.
He's good. I don't know if he's that good.
No,
I'd say, no, you bring a good point. So there's nothing, I think there's one of the more frustrating things to the average NFL fan is bad contracts. That is, every fan on their own team would be able to pick out a guy, a contract and be like, man, I wish we didn't have that one. And there's nothing, because it's the person's not living up to it's many levels to this. The person's not living up to the contract. You think about what else you could do with the money if they didn't have that contract. You think about who else, like you said, another position player at that position that makes less money, that's doing better, makes it worse, and it's and especially when there's such a discrepancy between the money and the productivity. Like there's nothing worse than a really bad. You see that in baseball too. Like there's just nothing worse than it really negatively affects the fan base when you have a contract, a bad contract. And no, I think I think there's a lot of teams that would look at Brock Purdy and be like, yeah, we missed on that one, but it's the Giants for such a glaring need, has to extra hurt. So
and to finish that Purdy contract, this contract point, I think it's rare when you got a CJ Stroud or even more a Brock Purdy who's making so little money, but you have a legit, like you're basically favored to make it to the Super Bowl again.
Yeah,
I think other GMs might make the mistake, or maybe not. Maybe fan bases make the mistake of thinking that's a repeatable template. Right. It's like, oh, what we need to do is hit a home run on a cheap quarterback and spend all our money on defensive end and left tackle and like all this other stuff. Like that's a 1 in a million shot. Like that's not a template you can follow. Like Joe Burrow is the template. If you can get him, that's how it should work. Or how any GM, no GM's gonna be like, oh, I just hope that the last pick just works out. Like that's not the template. That's just you got lucky. But I think some fan bases or maybe some GMs might just be, I don't know, wishful thinking that might happen. I don't know. Well, what do you got?
So my last one, I've got 2. One of them's just short. One of them's the international games. I'm moderately interested in seeing how that goes this year. There's 1 in Brazil, 3 in London, 1 in Germany. I don't mind that. It's I am less into that than the college one. I'm looking forward to the Florida State Georgia Tech one, but I don't. The Europe ones in the NFL don't really move the needle for me. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm surprised they're making them do that. So that's more for that one. And the last thing is that my hope for this year is that Bryce Young doesn't get killed and by getting sacked multiple times. And I think he's good, and I think he's had a rough go of it. And maybe it's just because I remember him at Alabama and how good he was there. But it's, I think I would be happy if he played well and showed that he's a talented QB. And he might be just in a bad situation, but like just not god awful.
Yeah, I'm the same with you. That's actually leads me to my next section, which is titled "Don't Know What to Expect, but I'm Interested." And in that section, I've got the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, obviously, for obvious reasons. He just, Heisman Trophy winner. He's looks kind of interesting in practice. He kind of reminds me of RG3. Same team too, right? And then Broncos, Bo Nix looks really interesting. I know it's preseason, but it's better when the Broncos are good. There's certain teams that I just enjoy, like to me, the NFL's better when certain teams are good. And then with Bryce Young, I have in my notes here, that's the other, don't know what to expect, but I'm interested. I'm just curious to see after all of what happened with trading the picks and how they're sort of inextricably forever linked to the Bears. Like Bryce Young and Caleb Williams' careers are going to be forever compared because of that trade, right? And then can the Panthers almost overcome all the odds with their idiot owner and just the situation they're in right now? I remember him in college too. He was unstoppable. He just looked like Caleb Williams, just smaller, but the same style of play. He could get out of any trouble, and it was frustrating if you were rooting against him because you're like, oh, he's going to make the play. Like he's just going to make the play. And this nonsense about him being too small to see over the line. How big do you think the Alabama offensive line is?
Yeah.
Like that's such a ridiculous argument. Point. Oh, he's in the NFL now. He can't see over the line. Really? How all of those NFL linemen, Alabama sends all of them to the NFL and they're all just as big. Yeah. So that's just such a stupid argument. Yeah. But yeah, I really hope they turn it around and his, just for his sake and the Panthers fans' sake, because they've just, I mean, it sucks really bad if you think your team is just on a 10-year spiral here.
Yeah, I don't mind if the team goes 3-13. I just want him to, like, if he plays well, that's more like shows promise. I'm looking forward to that. All right, that's it for me. Do you have anything?
No, I think that's it for now. I mean, I have a couple other items here. I mean, just a couple more must watches that are kind of obvious. Just the Bears with Caleb Williams and Hard Knocks. That's just a must watch TV, win or lose. There's just so much going on with the hype around it. Is he, can Chicago finally get a guy who can throw for 4,000 yards or are they cursed? Like, is it even this, what seems to be a can't miss prospect? Can the Bears even ruin a guy this good? And with Keenan Allen and Odunze, just everything that's on that team, you couldn't be more, it appears to be set up for success. And if it still doesn't work, the talk about overreaction. Again, just cross-reference Favre's first couple of years or Manning's, they didn't light it up and now they're Hall of Famers, but they had a couple bad years. But the pressure on this guy, I think, is going to be unfair given how stacked the team seems around him. I think they're just like playoffs or bust first year. Like no one's going to accept like 7 or 8 wins because everyone's going to think, well, Fields did that. Yeah. And they're going to forget that this is really hard for a rookie to do that.
Yeah. No, and it's like your other point too about like King Daniels and Bo Nix. Like I love watching them in college, and it's great to see it translate to the NFL. And there's nothing that the NFL is great when there's a new influx of talent. Like when a special young player comes around, it's always really good. It doesn't happen often, and so that's what. I get from when you describe that. Like if Bo Nix works out or if Jalen Daniels works out, then it's like, or Caleb Williams works out, like if he's an exciting player to watch for a few years, that's great. That just makes it better, So I did, and this is the first taste of it, was seeing him, Caleb Williams run around and complete some passes that looked like he did when he was at USC, which is great.
So. Yep. And I guess on that note, my final young player must watch is Anthony Richardson. And if I know they say he's raw and all that stuff, but I mean, when it's hard to, he jumps off the screen when he's playing. And it's just, to me, that's like, you got to watch this no matter what happens. You just got to watch because there's that much potential. But I mean, it's raw. I mean, that's what he looked like at Florida too. Right. But man,
that's there was the game against Utah. I was like, we've got the second coming of, like it's fantastic. And then there's other
Cam Newton
against Vanderbilt, can't move the ball. So when he puts it together, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So
the way I thought of him was Cam Newton, but way faster.
Ooh,
it's kind of like what, like you said, some of those games, like that game against Utah. I'm like, okay, that's the best thing I've seen in a long time, but we'll see. All right, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good. Who do you have as winning this week?
I mean, obviously FSU. So
yeah, I have a landslide victory for the NCAA this week because I did not enjoy watching the preseason NFL stuff, even though it's like seeing some of the good young players come. And there's nothing like the real games being on the schedule for the NCAA in the start of the season. So
yeah, this is an unfair
win
advantage. Unfair advantage. The college football wins the week for this week. All right. So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So for Jeff Dover, I'm John Barbin, and that's your Saturday versus Sunday podcast.